else joins. Are you happy to? Right. So welcome everybody to our second webinar of 2023. We're joined today by Rosie Parnell and Hussein Khanin from Newcastle University. Rosie and Hussein presented to us at conference, telling us about the work they did which ended up with their, correct me if I'm wrong, with your home hacks toolkit for children. Right. And they're joining us kindly, speaking to us again to tell us what progress they've made and where they are with their project, and hopefully going to recruit some of our members to help them develop it further.
Yes, wonderful. Exactly that.
Just to make everybody aware, this is the session is being recorded, and it will be made available to attendees, but also the whole membership of the section. So please keep your mics and cameras switched off. I guess at some point, Rosie and Hussein will invite questions, and if you want to put them in the chat, I'm happy to read them out, or if you want to switch your cameras on and microphones at that point, please do. Please do use the chat to share any information, or if you've got any questions that you think of as we're going through, then pop them in there, and we'll try our best to answer them. So I'll hand over to Rosie and Hussein.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great.
Thank you.
Really super that for us to be able to talk to you today. First, an apology if you were at the conference. It will be a bit of a recap and repetition, but I'm assuming that some people wouldn't have been, and that this would be a slightly different audience. But yes, as David said, we'll provide a little update, and the main thing is inviting you to take part. That would be absolutely fabulous. If you're interested to do that, we're going to invite you at the end and explain how to do that. So let's start at the beginning. We're going to start with a reflection. Everybody casts their minds back. So if you wouldn't mind, if it isn't too traumatic, cast your mind back to being at home during lockdown. Yes, that strange time. Think about where you spent your time. Which rooms were you in? Where were other people? Were there activity clashes? Was there noise and distractions? Maybe the opposite. Maybe you felt really isolated from others. Maybe you needed to timeshare spaces. Perhaps you used rooms in new ways. Did your lounge become a gym or a dance studio? Did your bedroom become your office? Maybe your kitchen was a classroom. Did you have to move furniture or even create new spaces somehow? Maybe you realized that some of the changes you made during lockdown were actually really good and you've kept them. Are there changes actually that have resulted from lockdown in the way that you use your home and the things that you have in your home, perhaps? So this is the context for our talk today, the idea that we can all potentially make changes to our home, even small moves to the way that we use it, and make them work better for ourselves and our families, and even improve our well-being as a result. Moving on. Next slide, please. So we're going to tell you about a project that we've been doing with Gateshead Council, specifically with the OT team there, Mary Putnam and her colleagues, as a case study to explore an output that we created called the Home Hack Toolkit. But to explain how we came to this Home Hack Toolkit, we're going to tell you about the research project that happened during lockdown, and Hussein will explain that.
Thank you, Rosie. So, yeah, we want to tell you about the research that underwent this many impact projects. So we did a project which was funded by a lot of money from the National Research Council and the Arts and Humanitarian Research Council. So there was a lot of money about web research to explore the impact and the issues surrounding the pandemic. And so we thought it would be really important to look at people experiences at their homes at this time, because it really was putting homes to the test. And we thought that we could therefore learn from our experiences. because people would have highlighted awareness of what worked and what didn't from the experiences of lockdown. And therefore, two main aims were to understand the role of domestic space in elevating and or exacerbating the psychological and social impact of COVID-19 on children and young people as experienced by families, and to understand what constitutes livable domestic space for families with children under pandemic condition. So the main project involved three key stages. So the first stages was a national survey. In the first step of the survey, we looked online to see if there was any photographic evidence of what people were already done in their homes. And actually, we didn't find very much other than in private Facebook chat groups. And then we did our online questionnaire, which was in Scotland and England, and was a large-scale survey. And one adult member of household was asked to fill in the survey on behalf of the household, which was a limitation, but then we followed it up with family interviews. So we interviewed all family groups, adults and children. And so we tried to have time with children at the end of the interview to probe further into their experiences. And after that, we did the focus groups, which were with adults in different households and also children from different households to explore their design ideas and alteration that might be useful. So the survey across Scotland and England targeted families with children, and within that you can see the whole range of different types of tenure and ownership. And so as you can see, the social housing with light blue is just this segment here, and the typical family homes is the 3 bedrooms with blue color, with light blue color, and the bedroom houses with orange segments. So there were more people in these types of houses. As you would expect, the satisfaction with the home decreased during lockdown. And we just want to point it out here that those living in social housing and small dwellings were the least satisfied in their homes. The satisfaction with the design elements were measured on the scale 1 to 5. So actually, overall, in terms of the average satisfaction, they were pretty satisfied, but they did show the drop between pre and during lockdown. So again, there is a drop in satisfaction with overall design elements for those living in small dwellings, such as flat and small terraces. So this is why we are focusing on this typology in our project. The statistical studies and results showed that half and third of household participants were dissatisfied with home as a space for home schooling and alone time. And even though these figures suggest a lot of people were satisfied, we found in our follow-up conversations that the impact of children play seeping into the rest of the home. We also discussed a lot in terms of well-being by adults in groups. Also, there was an increase in family conflict and tension. Just over half of households participants agreed there was more familial conflict and tension during lockdown. Again, perhaps unsurprisingly, given how much time everyone was spending together, most people would have liked more time and spare themselves. But what particularly pertinent here is that they agreed that there is a lack of time and space and had a negative impact on their well-being. And this is where there is a potential to think about how we might make a space for a long time in the home through adaptable design. So as this figure tells, well, most people did make alteration to their homes to try to improve their lockdown home life. So we tried to learn from some of these alterations, and we heard a lot about a range of different things that people did throw in lockdown during our interview. So these interviews were not just with adults, but also with the children, as mentioned earlier in these presentations. So there were some key themes that came out, 4 key themes, almost about together space and the creation of together space, which is really important, as came up in this quote here.
Playhouse, before it was a mess space, like loads of toys thrown around in it, and now it's more of a space where we just sit, and it's just nice to sit and like do crafts with them.
And then the second theme was compartmentalization. There were quite simple ways where people use very low tech ways to provide these separation because it was important.
I've used a couple of blankets, nailed them to a wall, and there's quite a big space there. It was quite like an extra room. You know, even though you were in the same room, you could hear everyone. It felt like a bit of privacy.
The next was connectedness. So the ability to be connected and yet apart sometime, as came in this quote as well.
What made that place, the alleyway, so good for alone time? I guess because it was obviously quick. It's weird, but obviously I can't leave my children unattended. But however, that was fine. They're in a safe space in the living room. So it was a case of, I'm just there, I can see them, just need a moment to breathe.
And then containment. So now this one really related to what we were saying earlier about playing the CD into the entire houses, and people try to find way to contain, for example, toys and stuff, but that not just really related to play. But there was other things came out, such as homeworking as well.
I think that used to cause a little bit of stress in the house because your toys are getting everywhere, put them away. And there was always a little bit of conflict there before we created a toy room.
So out of this came 2 main outputs. One is the design guide, a document focused on providing design strategies for new built home. And the other is the Home Hack Toolkit online website intended to help families to make home improvement. And it is what we are going to focus on more for the rest of this too. Rosie will start presenting this part now.
Sure. Okay. So yes, we get to the thing that we really welcome your engagement with. So this is targeting householders themselves, but there's an opportunity to potentially signpost it by a range of people working frontline positions with householders. The Home Hack Toolkit has a series of ways, it captures a series of really common challenge scenarios that people faced. And all of these icons on here click through to those different scenarios. Next slide, please. So we're going to just show you a couple of examples. So if you were to click through onto the play or free time, for example, what you see in each image is an adult and a child representative. And these challenges capture the challenges that we found out people had during lockdown. So if we click on one person, so here I think we're going to click on the child and get through to the child's image. And you see the common challenges. So there's nowhere I can go, and play stressing me out. That's a common one. I need more space to run and jump around, and my toys are all over the place. So then we click one. We're going to go for this one here, and we have a little image that kind of a little animation on the screen there. The next slide. And so then you get through to some design moves that might be a response to that challenge. They are, and this one is there an area you could divide off, or a corner you could adapt, or a small space you could convert? Explore how these design moves could help you make a getaway space at home. So this is targeting the children. And we click on the adapt, and then what happens is it takes you to a Pinterest board with a range of ideas. And the idea is that these are things that could be done in a relatively straightforward way. So they do get more challenging. You know, there might be a bit of DIY involved in some of them, but some of them are really straightforward, like the ones you see here, creating wigwams under pieces of cloth, etc., in corners of rooms. You know, that might be the kind of low-tech thing that you could do to shape your space for a hideaway. Or yeah. And so we see on the Pinterest site some examples, and you can go through to those boards, which I think we can click through to, yeah. So that's how it works. And then we have an adult one to show you. So another example, if we go back to the beginning, we click another scenario. This time, work or schoolwork. So a lot of adults, as you can imagine, found it tricky to find a place to do their work undisturbed, etc. There wasn't an actual study space. They hadn't worked from home before, for example. What we need when working and studying often conflicts with everyday home life. We need one space each for home working, for example. How do we find those spaces in a home that doesn't have enough space on the surface? We think that. So what happens? There's not enough room, everything's everywhere, we're trying to work among everything else. What might we do? Click. And is there a room you could adapt to become a workspace for part of the day? So time sharing again, or maybe you could temporarily divide a room to create 2 work areas. And then we click through this time to adapt. Okay, so the key here that people were talking about was actually the actual separation of space, in the sense that you're in a separate space. So some of these ideas adapt. This is a more kind of involved idea, that you might have a shed you could use, or create a space within a space. I think spaces within spaces was the key in many cases, how to shape space within space and create some kind of study area. And so a lot of these things, you know, are kind of they're not things that are of great, they're not big surprises in terms of how you might do that, but they are things that people don't necessarily pause to think about, how their space might help them. And so the idea is to kind of give people that impetus and inspiration to think about their spatial needs in different ways, and how they might shape space themselves. And there are lots and lots of these routes and different challenges and scenarios for each adult and child. Next, please. So what we've been doing is, this site has been created for any householders. It's very, very generic. But as we saw, people in social housing were the least satisfied during lockdown. And of course, one of the things that we're finding is that lockdown has left a legacy of changes in the home. There are more people, for example, who don't put their children into childcare after school. They might be working from home more days a week. There might be challenges occurring from activities in space that didn't used to be in the same space at home, or different time patterns to work life, home and work life. So all of these things seem to have shaped a kind of a new home life for a lot of people. So there's that, coupled with the challenges that we see for families living in social housing generally, and the challenge to find appropriate homes for families with children in particular. So the idea here was to look at whether it was possible for the Home Hack Toolkit to become useful for frontline workers more generally, but specifically those working in housing occupational therapy. So that's what we've been exploring with Mary and her team. Next slide, please.
So yeah, we produce material that we would like your feedback on from OTs, and this is one of our development feedback workshop where we've had with Gateshead Council, and now we extend it to a wider audience, and we would like, as I said, your feedback too. So at the end, of this webinar, we will ask you to provide feedback on our practical guide and also the material we developed for householders. So through our discussion with occupational therapists at Guest Council, we identified the most relevant challenges for tenants, as you can see from here. So it's more relevant to alone time, together time, play and free time, and then work and school work. So you see here the challenges that the Get It team thought the most relevant for Home Hack Toolkit for social housing tenant. Yep. Would you like Rosie to talk about the practical guide?
It's got a very loud siren at that moment. So what we've also created is just a guide that quite literally can be pasted into an email as a follow-up as well. So sections that you potentially could identify as more relevant to a particular household, you could then extract and paste into a follow-up email potentially, or part of your usual procedures. So I suppose one of our questions is what is the most appropriate format for communicating and signposting, whether or not it's appropriate to communicate and signpost. But yeah, that's the idea here. So the guide itself that you'll see and are welcome to go and explore further actually allows you to cut and paste, and yeah, that can be forwarded to householders. We also potentially have a leaflet here, which is directed more at householders themselves. Simon, you want to talk through that?
Yep. So we produce material to raise awareness with the household, and actually we haven't done this yet, but we would like to invite you, if you could support sending these materials to, as we did not manage actually to doing this with the Get Set Council. So we would like to raise awareness with household, and we could produce material like this if you would like to share it with your tenant. So all of these, so we pick up the same scenarios identified through our development workshop with OTs at Get Set Council, and we provided barcode also for each scenarios that make it easier for a householder to access each challenge and see what possible improvement they could made through the website.
Yeah, so quite targeted to those things that what Gateshead thought would be more specifically helpful, rather than searching the whole site necessarily. Okay, yeah.
And then we also looked at sources of support for households, such as free and low-cost materials, furniture, tools, and skills development. As you can see from the slide, we tried to identify some kind of online resources where household could learn or gain some skills development by these resources. And yeah, that might be helpful for them, to initiate home alteration for improved well-being by families. And we embedded this in the Home Hack Toolkit website.
Yeah, I noticed last night even more programs emerging. It seems to be the in thing to have programs about transforming your home again. Like Changing Rooms was in the 90s. That phase is returning with a slightly different angle. So some of them have some really great ideas within them, even though they might be off-putting because they look like they could be very expensive. They tend to be part of enormous transformations of homes, but actually within that there are some nice, neat little ideas, which would be great to kind of catalogue at some point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where we're at with it. We've done this work with Gateshead, and we'd love to kind of roll it out more broadly now. And there might be, it's obviously a work in progress. And I noticed a question come up about whether there be an app for example, to go with the phone. So I think moving forward, if we had another pot of money, it would be lovely to do some more tailored outputs specifically for social housing tenants. I mean, it wouldn't have to be labelled as such, but something that was more targeting people who want to do things that are specifically low and no cost, and tying it in with this list of support, you know, a more kind of regional list of support that you could tap into. So yeah, there's this vision of it becoming something much more tailored, but I think that will we need another pot of money to do that with. But any thoughts in that direction would be really welcome, because that's all good support for anything that we might do in the future. Meanwhile, though, if you think that the guide we've already produced could be made a little more helpful, or if there are other ways to use the existing home hack toolkit, just please do let us know. So what we've done is we've created this link, which is a feedback form, but that feedback form also has the link to the home hack toolkit on it, and the link to the guide that we showed, so you can download it as well and have it and use it. And yes, everything's on there. Hussam, have you got that page up? Could you maybe just show the form?
Okay, so I need to share the link, if that's okay. Just stop sharing this first.
Yeah, always have to go out and come back in again, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, happy to take questions if you would like to ask questions.
Yes,
currently the website works, has been devised for smartphones as well. So there is a version, but it's just not an actual app. It's not a all singing or dancing thing, because I think the next iteration could be a lot, more tailored, as I say.
Oh, fantastic. Does anybody can be brave enough and ask a question?
That'd be great.
I've got another question.
Yeah.
It's possibly more down the development of an app.
Mm.
Have you spoken with Brian Abraham?
No.
Because I'm sure he's at Newcastle University, and he's doing a virtual reality, looking at room sizes and various things.
Right, Brian Abraham.
So I don't know whether that's something that's if an app was ever developed, or you could kind of take a kind of like where you can kind of go to DFS, can't you, with your sofa, and you can take a picture.
Yeah, I know, that's it.
Sort of like that augmented reality type things. You could kind of go, oh well, that's an idea. How would that look in my room?
Absolutely. Wouldn't it be great?
Kind of exploring that.
It would be super to do something like that. Absolutely. Yeah. But we can see the form now. So it's just a few open questions, not a hugely lengthy thing. It's just, how would you change it? If you've tried it, how do you find it useful? Do you have any other ideas? Essentially, that's all we're asking. But at the top there, you see the link, so to the toolkit, so you can go straight there, and then that's the guide, where you can download the guide, which allows you to paste into emails. If you set it to HTML, you literally can paste in with the image and everything, but you have to set the message to HTML, which I don't even know how to do. So hopefully you do. Hussam does. He knows how to do that. Yeah.
How long is the survey open for?
Forever. This is just
Okay, so this is you using this with other groups collating feedback?
Exactly.
Okay. It's not specifically for today, but it's collating all of your feedback from.
We created it specifically for today, but we'd welcome we did, but we'd welcome any, if other people find out about it later, we'll share the link, etc.
Somebody must have a question.
Yeah, well, I was going to just expand a little on what Mary told us about the impact they have found. So what Mary said is that the biggest impact seems to have been in just kind of on when speaking to people who are waiting for rehousing, there isn't a large enough home available for them at this moment in time, etc., etc. It's just pausing and suddenly seeing that there is a conversation to be had about in the meantime, what might be helpful in the meantime. And I know that there's a kind of balance to be found there, because you can't promise you'll come in and make alterations yourselves, of course, but just shifting the conversation to talk about immediate needs spatially and how it might be possible to make alterations to help. And areas that seem particularly relevant that were always coming up in conversation were around children with autism, for example, needing particular restoration spaces, spaces to calm, or just sensory when they're overloaded, etc. This is me talking from my own experience too, as a parent of a child with autism, but she said it was particularly relevant in those kinds of conversations, but also in adult well-being as well, interdependently with the well-being of the child. That actually it just did give that she did find she was having slight different conversations because of the awareness that had been raised through the toolkit. So I suppose that's, we can't share anything about impacts that have happened as a result of householders making change at this point. We'd love to be able to at some point, but right now it's more on the practice and thinking of the OT. I know at the conference too, we had some great follow-up conversations with people saying, well, actually during lockdown we were advising things like installing swings for children's needs, for just sense of movement in a small space, for example. So I mean interior swings, for example. I forget what else right now, but there were lots of things that clearly people are already doing. And I think adding anything that's really to the Pinterest that could be, that's the other thing that you could send as ideas for the Pinterest boards as well.
Oh, that neatly links into,
yes.
And asks, could the link for the survey be put in the chat?
Yes, let's do that.
And Michelle asks, are the linked Pinterest boards live and regularly updated with new ideas? And can ideas be added externally?
Yeah, okay. So one of the reasons we created it in Pinterest was so that it could kind of spark people creating their own, of course. So people will have created their own attached to it. We have loads of followers, and I'm assuming that out there in the world there are then tailored boards that are created along the same lines, but I couldn't tell you about those because I can't see them. But so the way that Pinterest works is you can't add to other people's, I don't think, but tell me if you can, because I haven't found a way of doing that. Updated regularly, not at the moment, but yes, would like to keep doing that. There's a huge scope to keep adding, but that would be ideal, that if we could create one where everyone could contribute and they're somehow linked. That was the vision for it, is that there's a kind of social media presence for the Home Hack Toolkit that where everyone can create their own content. But and we chose Pinterest because it's so readily available and used by people, rather than, I don't know, photo boards where you don't get that many users. But there are some limits to how you see each other's sites. So if anyone knows of a way to kind of share things and update each other's, please do get in touch. Because it would be
also just to add something else regarding this question. So we created a feedback button also within the website. So where households who are using this website could, provide a feedback for us, for example, to add further thoughts or further things, or if there's any difficulties, for example. So yeah, this might be useful for continuous update of the website as well.
Yeah. So Hussam, could you please go back to the final presentation slide, because that also has a QR code on that takes you to the feedback form. But what does this make sense to people? If we were, I know some people will be interested to take it further, some won't, but we would love to work with anyone who's interested. So Would it make sense if after this seminar, everyone who's been on the webinar today, we send you the leaflet for householders that, and then you can decide whether it's appropriate to distribute, and the links that we've already shared. Would that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'd be useful for, well, actually, it'd be more than useful for everybody to see that resource.
Brilliant.
We've got a thumbs up from Helen.
Thank you. Brilliant. Sounds great. And yeah, if the slide, we'll attach the slides too, and then you've got all these contacts, etc. But brilliant. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much to you, Rosie,
you.
and for coming along and speaking with us. Does anybody have any questions, anything that they want to add, whether they want to pop it in the chat or be brave enough to come and say hello? This is the odd thing about Zoom, is you can't see everybody.
I know.
It's really disconcerting that you can't see what.
Tell me about it. It's how we teach a lot of the time still.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Yeah,
particularly for the person who are actually sharing the slides, so I cannot see even the only few.
That's right. You can't see anyone when you're sharing.
No, that's true. Yeah. It's and it's much harder to do something virtually because you can't gauge what people's reactions are.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
But thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And
yeah, thank you so much.
Very
Thank you so much
to Rosie and Hussam for giving us their time. We'll circulate the video will be posted on our YouTube page with a link shared via our newsletter. So you will get a chance to watch it again. And I'll share that as well with you, Rosie, and so you've got a copy of it in case you want to use it again or whatever, or it's entirely up to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.
And we'll circulate the links for the PowerPoint and the leaflet that you've produced.
Yeah,
it looks
great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. And hopefully you'll come back and tell us a bit more about when you've got if you get more input from therapists, how we can be of more help.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your lunch break.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, David.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.